Okay, I'm good to go. Okay, where's the camera people?
You want camera people or you want?
No, I'm ready to go. I'm just waiting for you to say start. Okay, I want down everyone by third. Exposure down by third on all of them.
On all of them?
Yeah.
By third?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's the network doing?
We're ready to start.
It's ready to start, but already all the cameras must go down by third. So we'll drop the high one.
Okay.
Just
By how much?
One down. Just one. I hope we are all on effect.
Cables or
Yeah, PVC.
Guys, let's start.
Okay, that's perfect.
Together?
Just one down, I think. Effect.
Tell me when to switch to video.
Now. You should have been on video at 3.
Nico?
Which camera is that?
The telecom one, I'm not sure.
That
It's
is...
probably normal one.
Okay, that is 2.
If you shot this,
Okay, yeah.
this one.
Okay, we're good on exposure. Okay.
That one.
Okay, Patrick, you wanna come check everything?
Yeah. Is it Viacom?
Yes. Whatever you do, man,
Viacom.
On new team.
Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been
Cool.
for...
Guys, can we all agree before we go live at 6?
Okay.
There, yeah, that's
We're
So
live.
please
We're live
time
on sound and video.
someone.
Action.
Good afternoon and welcome to the DBE YouTube channel. This is the pre-budget debate. My name is Tsheohaco Moagi, and joining me for this particular debate for us to just break down what we could expect from the minister's speech. She's expected to deliver that speech at 4:30. I'm joined by Mhlanga. He's of course from the Department of Basic Education, the Chief Director in Communications there. And I'm joined also by Xolani Fakude. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. So let's start off, Elijah, with you. What is the importance really of this particular budget speech that we'll be hearing from the minister?
Well, it's very important in that education in the past year has been under pressure due to COVID-19. And it's actually the second time that the minister will be delivering a budget vote speech under these difficult conditions. So everything that she's going to say, we need to keep that in mind, that things are not normal. So it's not just a situation where she allocates money to programs that must happen as people are expecting. When schools were forced to close in March of 2020, we were also forced to suspend some of our pilot projects that the department had sought to undertake. But also some of the programs that had been running for many, many years were not running, like the choral competition, the moot court, and all these other things. So the system was really frustrated in that way. So when we listen to the budget vote speech by the minister this afternoon, we need to take all these factors into account, that it's still really an extremely complex environment that we're operating under.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw that especially with having to suspend school sports. It definitely is a complex situation. Now, Xolani, we know that as a teacher union, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, there will be expectations that you have. Just tell us, what are some of the expectations that you have as SATU from this particular speech today?
Thank you, Tsheohaco. First, let me greet you, Elijah, let me greet the viewers as well. I think Tsheohaco, as a union, and perhaps as education workers in general, we have now grown to the position whereby we want to differentiate between what our expectations are vis-a-vis what we hope for. More often than not, we have found that there is a huge gap between what we would expect versus what we would hope for. In fact, let me break it down in this particular fashion. When I was listening to Elijah here as we're discussing what could be the budget like, of course touches on a COVID budget, the COVID conditions. But however, Tsheohaco, the reality and the fact of the matter is that we have been seeing some worrying trends even before COVID. I'm trying to caution against this particular approach of a COVID budget, because a COVID budget is inherently a pessimistic budget. It's what actually is preparing us for budget cuts, knowing very well that that becomes almost like an antithesis of what we seek to achieve as a country. It's part of the National Development Plan. The budget cuts, by the way, started being quite prominent within the 2018-2019, by the way, budget. That's when the trend started, when we saw budget cuts in as far as the infrastructure funds were concerned. That is the money that is meant to replace and make sure that there are no mud schools. That is the very same money that is supposed to make sure that there are no pit toilets, remove all of them. So now we started seeing those budget cuts affecting some of those critical areas, which in our view was in actual fact not even going to assist in terms of addressing the inequalities that exist between the haves and the haves not in the system. So what we are saying, Tsheohaco, is that whilst we note and appreciate the COVID reality that is presented, however, we must also be very cautious and be very appreciative of the fact that there are some worrying trends that we already had since started already by the DB. Of course, we accept that there are also austerity measures that are being put in place through the back door, by the way, if I may add. As a union, we are seeing these austerity measures being put in by the Treasury through the back door, somehow having an element of pressure on the DBE coming from their side. But however, we must emphasize about those trends and warn against those also as the minister will be presenting the budget vote.
Elijah, would you like to respond to that?
Well, yes. It is not a preparation for budget cuts. It's the reality that we are facing. It is important that in this situation that we are in, we take into account the current environment, that things are not normal. So we cannot speak as though things are normal when they are not. It's not to say that the department has lost sight of its vision in terms of the National Development Plan. We're still working alongside those targets that are there, and I mean, you'll hear the minister, she will talk about the work that the department is doing, and she will outline a whole range of things that the department has made strides in, even against the challenges of budget cuts that we've been facing in recent years. Also, not because of anybody's choice, but because the economy globally and in the country is not doing well. And that eventually affects everything else that the country would want to do. So we are saying, let's understand that the situation is not normal. Yes, analyze the budget for speech, but take into account that things have had to start. In fact, she was saying just the other day at the UNESCO ESD conference that some of the gains that we've made in the sector are now being threatened by the impact of COVID-19. That's a reality, and it's not just us, everywhere else. But it's not necessarily to say that it's a pessimistic budget. It's a realistic budget to say this is what we need to do, and this is what has been made available to the sector. But of course, we'll wait to hear from the minister what she's got to say. Talking about infrastructure, a lot of work is still ongoing. We have published many photographs which are evidence of the work that is underway to deal specifically with the pit latrines that he's talking about, but to also build schools and renovate schools. So all that work is ongoing. Reprioritization means that you look at what you have to do versus what you have and what will be available in the next medium-term period. And then you say, okay, this is what is possible, and then we reprioritize from there. But we know what is core, we know what is critical for the sector to be able to function, and we make sure not to compromise those at all times during planning.
It's quite interesting that you went to infrastructure. Before we come back to that, Xolani, I know that you definitely want to speak about that. But Elijah, there are the 6 cardinal basic education sector priorities. How feasible are these to be achieved, especially with COVID-19 that has now hit us, that's still with us?
Well, you know, we've been listening to researchers that have been delivering different presentations to the minister, to the department in various platforms. They are saying that some of the gains that they've made over the years, based on those cardinal programs you're talking about, have now suffered a blow because of COVID-19. I mean, you talk about school nutrition, you talk about learning losses, you talk about the skills among learners in terms of numeracy and literacy. That opportunity to sustain that training and learning has been lost. As we speak right now, learners are going to school on a rotational basis, something that we have never seen in our lifetime. I mean, in the history of education, there's never been anything of this sort. So all of those disruptions that are caused by the restrictions that are there right now as part of the management of COVID-19, they've put added pressure to the sector. But more so, they've exposed other inequalities that, you know, we thought we could manage, but now they are right there in the open for everyone to see. And now things that, you know, were for long-term planning have now become urgent. But the minister has always said that don't waste this crisis, use it profitably. And we are trying to do that. We've been working with our partners to accelerate some of the services that need to be delivered in the basic education sector.
Xolani, let's just go back to what Elijah mentioned, the issue of the infrastructure. It is a priority. The department is saying that it is a priority for them to ensure that the dignity is brought back into the education sector by fast-tracking most of these infrastructure projects. As SATU, have you seen this? Are you satisfied with what you've seen? And what do you think the minister should say regarding infrastructure in her speech today?
In fact, Tsheohaco, you're asking a very, very good question. But even before we go there, I want to start where Elijah ended off, quoting the minister that we should not waste this particular crisis. In fact, I want to rephrase it and say that not only must we not waste this particular COVID crisis, but we must not also go back into a crisis before the crisis. That's also one thing that we must be very, very critical of. When Elijah speaks of, I insist, what we are being prepared for, a pessimistic budget. COVID budget, I insist, call it realistic, call it pessimistic. Now, what Elijah talks about, it should, when we talk about not wasting a crisis, for instance, we should be hearing the minister also responding to your question directly. We should be hearing the minister that now that we are in this particular COVID reality that has been presented to us, none of us had seen it before. None of us had actually been prepared to work under such conditions before. But then, for instance, the gaps that were illuminated by the very COVID pandemic, what then is the Department of Basic Education going to do to decisively roll those back? I, for instance, refer more directly to technological platforms, technological and digital platforms. And we've always said that during the COVID, the first lockdowns, 4, when there were no schools at all, we know for a fact that whilst others were not having access to education, because there's just simply, never mind data, there's not even a tower in the rural village where they stay. Others were actually having access to some of those. They were continuing with education, which means that it illuminated and brought back this crisis that we think must be a national discussion. That to what extent, for how long are we prepared as a country to have literally what is a two-tier education system? That services the haves, services the haves not. For instance, the Department of Basic Education in this case, we insist as SATU that we still do not even have a unitary basic education system in this country on its own. We give an example of the Western Cape. The Western Cape, when you come with the matric results, one of the best performing provinces, by the way. But now when you look in reality, when the term started this particular year, we still had above 10,000 learners that still needed to be placed in the Western Cape, and most of them were in the township areas, Lego, Khayelitsha, and so forth. Now, it tells you that there is an element of coherence that is required, and that is also linked to political will. It is what the parliamentarians must show us. It is also the intent that we must hear the minister talk about today, part of those.
Now, we do know that, I think the big thing that a lot of people also like to know is the issue of the ECD movement from DSD to DBE. Will there be any financial implications in there for the Department of Basic Education?
Well, there will be financial implications. The question is what that means. But that's a long-term project that the departments are actually working on. There will be a mention and update on that in the speech, because it cannot be omitted. It's something that is urgent. It's something that is also a priority in the country as part and parcel of the big project of fixing the education system from the bottom. We are responding in that way, and both the Department of Social Development as well as the Department of Basic Education are working together quite well, and there are work streams that are focusing in the different areas that need to be addressed as the process of shifting the function from DSD to DBE. So that work is underway. I don't want to say a lot. The minister will talk to that. But definitely, when you move a function from one place to another, it means something. It means that there might be people who will need to move along, and when they move, they will have to move with the money as well. But all of those things the minister will talk to, but also at the right time there will be specific briefings on the progress that is being made in that regard.
Xolani, yes.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to come in there. You know, we are really hoping, so sorry if I really disturb you. We are hoping that when the minister comes in and speaks, particularly on the issue of ECD, we will hear something different from what we've been hearing from the previous budget votes, to be honest. One of the pressures that we have in this country, and what we have always emphasized, is that we seem to be having an obsession with matric results. And because we have got this obsession with matric results, that is the kind of a system that we have. It sort of limits our attention on all the other levels that are critical within a 12-year journey, one of those being ECD. We have called for a number of years. By the way, the things that we'll be saying, I can almost predict what the minister will tell us about ECD. It will be very, very nice things. In actual fact, how they are going to be formalized, how they are going to have opportunities as well for progressive and continuous professional development. All of those things, we are going to be hearing those, I can assure you. But fact of the matter is that those ECD practitioners on the ground, it is one of the areas where we have identified as such as one of the weakest links within the entire education system, by the way. And you only get to see it when we get to matric. Now, we are saying as a union that we need to also rethink education as this particular country, and we're hoping that it will be a rethought budget as well. It can't be a budget that is assessment, ticking the box, obsessed. It must also be about the inputs that go in. For instance, just one complaint. We've got an anxiety that we're dealing with right now as education workers. Anxiety related to the 319,000 plus additional human resources that we now have in our space to assist us. Now, we know that that is a program that is either threatened that it will come to an end. We know that attempts have been made to either continue with it, and we are saying that we should not even be having this discussion. Elijah, you would know that countries that have got the best performing education systems, in a class you're going to have an education assistant as a matter of practice, but not in South Africa, whereas we still have got an even unfavorable teacher-learner ratio that we must deal with. So we're really hoping that we'll see real movement, by the way. Let it not just be the nice things that we've been hearing for a number of years. We really want to hold, and we are going to do that as a union, by the way. We are going to hold the DBE accountable in this regard.
All right, let's talk the issue of the copyright bill. Xolani, this is something that you definitely need to raise. Let's hear your take on this.
Now, the copyright bill, the way we link it to education, it comes to where we started with this discussion, where I said that we're now learning to differentiate between our expectations and hopes in terms of the budget vote. The intention of what happens in parliament at the legislative level vis-a-vis the intention that we have. For instance, you've got a copyright bill that has now been essentially been returned back to parliament. It's an amendment bill. An amendment bill that would have made it easier for us in the context of the digital age, by the way, for those poorer learners in those the most rural far-flung areas to even access through digital platforms, educational resources. All of those issues are related to a copyright amendment bill which we have right now. Now, we all know that we've got pressure to reduce inequalities in the system, but yet at the parliamentary level, you've got parliamentarians returning back a copyright amendment bill which we deem as being progressive, which actually we have even, and the only reason, so it is only related to commercial interest, which is why it even bothers us. The reason why now a process which started in 2011 is being returned back to start from scratch, right? It is because there are commercial interests related to the US trade, etc., etc. So we are saying that the Department of Basic Education should have done more. We know that the lead department is the Department of Trade and Industry in this case, but the DBE should have done more because it is the lead department in terms of reducing inequalities in the education sector in this country. That is what we are critical of. And we are critical, by the way, of those parliamentarians there in parliament who have turned back this bill. We are very critical of them as well.
Is there something more that the department could have done?
Well, we are doing more. As you said, we are not the lead department. All that you can do is to provide the input from the side of the Department of Basic Education. I mean, it's a huge thing for us. We have books that are written, we've got material that we need for our learners, and all of that needs to be freely available for learning and teaching to take place. We should go beyond limitations of any time, especially when it comes to accessing education and learning resources. So the minister is an MP, she plays a part in that space, participates together with the deputy minister in different committees that look into all sorts of things, particularly in terms of looking after the interests of basic education. So that work is there, is being done. In Parliament, they will do what happens in Parliament, and we hope that one of the things that is making it difficult for a conclusion to be arrived at is the fact that there are many competing interests. There's basic education there is the arts, there is DTI with business, and so everyone, it's a contested terrain, but we are there playing our part to make sure that we protect the interest of learners. But let's talk about the inequalities that I was talking about. When COVID first hit in March, we got together partners, and this is where we want to talk about not wasting a crisis. We got together partners, the SABC, DSTV, ETV, everyone into a room and said, guys, learning is not happening. We please need your cooperation and collaboration in this particular regard to try get some form of education going while there's a complete shutdown in the country in terms of our movement of people. And they came on board. We had access to radio, we had access to TV channels, and we used those channels for learning and teaching purposes. The Department of Digital Innovations and Technologies also came on board. They zero-rated many sites, I think up to 400 sites, which became available for young people in their households to be able to access material for learning purposes without having to pay for such. So some work was done to try to keep education going at no cost to people, particularly those that in the rural areas. We also used community radio as well. So we did some work, and we tried to, have a situation which had not been seen before that would be used to support learners in the basic education sector. Talking about the class size and the education assistants and general assistants, that's correct. I mean, we've piloted this. The first phase has come and gone. It came, we didn't have time. I mean, this thing, we literally had 1 month from recruitment to appointment to placing these young people in school. The fact that we're able to do that in a short space of time means that there's a possibility of something even better that could come about. So what has taken place is that we were given 7 billion rand to undertake this thing, and that money has been used, and there were lots of benefits in schools right across the country. And it's correct. I mean, the feedback that we're getting is that those assistants played a huge role in making sure that schools are functional, that there is assistance in terms of the general environment to make sure that learners are complying to the health and safety protocols. So all of that work has been done. But right now where we are, we're waiting. I mean, we compiled a report, submitted it together with a proposal for another phase. We're waiting for the money. We don't have the budget. We didn't have the money. That was a presidential youth employment initiative. The funding came from Treasury. So we went back there and said, this thing worked for us. We'd like to do it again. But here's the proposal. Let's talk. So that's where we are now. We believe that, in fact, we believe it will be approved because we made a very strong case to say there's a benefit, there are many benefits to this particular project, and we feel it should happen. And I think the minister will talk about it as well because it falls within this particular financial year as part of her reporting. She will talk about it, and I believe that there will also be some kind of an update on it as well. It's an important, critical initiative that we experienced as part of the COVID relief initiatives, one of the many, and that, I mean, we would like to see it happen. Over and above the fact that it assisted schools, it benefited those young people as well in terms of earning an honest income from a school, having done work that everyone could see.
Xolani, before you respond to Elijah, let's also just talk about what you would like to see as such with the provincial allocations within this particular budget.
Well, I mean, what we want to see in terms of the provincial allocations, and we've always been insisted on it, was one of my earlier points as well, is that there must be a very firm attempt really to reduce the gap that exists within the various provinces. What we know and what we have picked up over the years, even from the trend analysis that normally the Department of Basic Education itself assists us with, is that you will realize that we still have got huge gaps within provinces, and it is almost to be expected. We almost know what the metric results are going to look like. You know that right at the bottom there, you're going to have the mostly rural provinces, going to have Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga there, and so forth. You know who we're going to have on top, and normally it is related to the various provincial dynamics that are a reality in the education system. What is experienced as a reality in terms of the class sizes, in terms of the facilities, in terms of the infrastructure in Gauteng, for instance, is vastly different from what we experienced in Limpopo. We're hearing shocking stories during COVID, by the way. I mean, in terms of the ablution facilities, we're still speaking ablution facilities availability in certain areas around Umupane and so forth there. We've got this information, we receive it from our members. It will be a completely different story when you come to Gauteng. So what we are saying is that there must be an attempt by all means to make sure that it is a budget that responds to the call for a one education system, an education system that reduces inequalities between the haves and the haves not. And of course, a provincial allocation trend that seeks to also address some of the historical imbalances that already exist within what would be the rural provinces and what would be the largely urban provinces. And again, of course, it will be our hope that there will be an emphasis on infrastructure. It remains a critical issue. We can't be this day and age be discussing mud toilets. Some of them, they are there allegedly Eastern Cape. We can't be discussing that, not in 2021. It cannot be correct. Not only that, we're still talking about safety in school. A school must be an ideal environment, a haven of safety. And we're saying that the budget, therefore, must speak to those particular ambitions that we have as a country. National ambitions, by the way, it's a national development plan that said education is an apex priority. So let it therefore be treated as an apex priority.
Elijah, these provincial allocations, what happens to them? And I mean, Xolani is constantly raising the issue of infrastructure, which we know has been a problem for the department in various provinces for a while now.
Well, it's not so much the budget allocation, it's the efficient use of resources that are available. And that's what the department is now moving into, and strongly so. The minister holds meetings weekly on Friday with the infrastructure teams, 7 to 8. We are in a meeting looking, where are we? So there's a weekly reporting cycle on the delivery of school infrastructure right across the country. That's why you see the DG running around everywhere trying to check if all the projects that are underway are really happening at the right pace and whether they will be completed on time. All of these things are done to make sure that the work that has been set out in a particular financial year is actually done. And this monitoring is assisted because now the implementing agents are seeing that, you know, the seriousness, and they are also working. I mean, we are seeing images now of them working even night shift because they see that things are bad. They need to finish. It's not about you extending the project for however long that you want to just try keep some work. It's really about finishing so that we can move to the next thing. So the focus is really on efficient use of resources, making sure that monies, allocations are used at the right time and for the right purpose, and delivering exactly that which was given to you to deliver if you are an implementing agent. So that's where we are now. And provinces can also see as well the seriousness, because even in meetings, the minister does raise this issue. It's not just a priority for South Africans out there and not for the department. It's equally our priority. In fact, in all the time that I've worked with the minister, I have not seen her focusing this much on school infrastructure, such that every 4 days, basically, the branch that handles school infrastructure must report on progress that has been made, which means there's an hour-to-hour monitoring of school infrastructure. So again, in the budget vote, there should be something on that, because it's a priority program for the department, for the country, for the minister. It's correct. I mean, it's not desirable that we're still seeing unsafe sanitation facilities, and for that we came up with the sanitation appropriate for education, to make sure that all our schools are given the resources that they require.
Just as a wrap-up, can we agree that we're all hoping for a realistic budget vote speech from the minister?
Realistic but not pessimistic. Yes, we do agree on that, and we're saying no to budget cuts. When it is an apex priority, let it be an apex priority. Budget cuts are an antithesis of that. So no budget cuts, then it will be realistic, then we'll be fine.
All right, thank you, Xolani.
Thank you.
Elijah?
Thank you. No, absolutely. I mean, the minister will outline the priorities, and there you will see there's an action plan, a report, but also an action plan on what is being done with the little that we have. So, yeah, I think the rest will unveil later on.
All right, that brings us then to the end of this particular debate, the pre-budget vote speech debate with Xolani Fakude. He is from SATU, and Elijah Mhlanga from the Department of Basic Education. Of course, stay tuned. The minister will be giving her speech at about 4:30. From myself, Tsheohaco, thank you for tuning in.